today, one thing nice about having a great team work with you is that they're able to do things on the fly. And I asked Drew if he would take today since Elizabeth could not come, and he put together a program in quite a short time for you, and I'm really proud that he was able to do that, and I want to thank him publicly for filling in. And so I hope you appreciate what he's put together. It's images of Nashville, selections from the Metro Archives photographic collections. And Drew Mahan is he's our lead at the archives, and so I'm going to present him. And if you have questions, please ask. So without any further delay, I will turn it over to Drew.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Ken said, I'm Drew Mahan. I'm kind of our lead photo archivist here. This is kind of what I do on an everyday basis. So this is the stuff that I really love. And you'll probably see that when I'm speaking here. This is the stuff that I enjoy talking about, and I like looking at it on a daily basis. So basically what I'm going to show you is some of the photo collections that we have here. And we've got a lot of photos here. Just a few notes on what we have here at Metro Archives. We have 716 gigs of digitized images. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. It's a lot. Approximately 500,000 photos and negatives here. Most of those come from the City Photographer Collection, which is mostly comprised of images 1940s and 1970s. So that's kind of what we have the most of, I would say. There's the years the images fall under. 1880s to early 2000s, I would say. Most of our collection in the mid-century period, 40 to 70. Like I said, City Photographer Collection, those 30 years. And during that time, everyone always asked me who was the city photographer. And the names I see a lot on these photos are William King and James Doris. And they were pretty prolific during this period. They took a lot of photos for the city, and that was their job, to go and take photos. And we got a lot of those collections. So that's just kind of a background as to what we have here. And we'll start with just one of the collections that I just love immensely. This is one of our most important collections. It's from Walter Williams Jr. And his father flew in the Tennessee Air Guard, 105th Observation Squadron. So he took aerial photographs of the city. And this is probably the earliest document we have of the city's landscape and the architecture. This starts in 1925. And there is Mr. Senior there. This is at Berry Field, probably in the mid-30s, I'm guessing. And his son is the one who donated these to us, I should say. And there is the old hangar. I don't believe that one's still there. There are a couple still remaining out there at Berry Field, but I don't believe that one's there. And that's there. And this is the gentleman who took a lot of the photos, Sergeant Spate. And he recently brought me this photo, Mr. Williams Jr. And he was like, this is the guy who took them. And I thought it was so neat, lugging this thing way up in the air. Look at the size of that thing. I just thought it was so fascinating that they would be taking him from that. But that's the technology they had. And a lot of times they would also lug these glass plates up there to take the photos on, so even more weight. And here's just kind of a sampling of some of that collection, which I just love these. Yeah, this is, if you've been to Centennial Park recently, it looks a little different. You'll notice the hedge maze there, and I believe that's to the west, yeah. And there's no other buildings really in Centennial Park at the time. You can see there's a home here or some kind of gatehouse that's no longer there. And this is something a lot of Nashvillians remember up here. Do we know what that is? The Hippodrome up there on West End. A big roller skating rink, multi-use venue. So that's really cool. And you'll notice here the skylight in the Parthenon. And this was before the Parthenon was rebuilt in concrete. Parthenon was built of plaster, which is very cheap, meant to be temporary. In the late 20s, I believe, they rebuilt it in concrete. So this was before that. So I put a date on it, about 1925. And you'll see this a lot of this circa, CA. It's kind of what I think it was, based on the environment and the landscape. So that's a pretty neat one.
What's that major street, Drew?
Right here, oh gosh, what is that, 31st, I believe?
Okay.
I think it's 31st, yeah. So we're looking back towards West End. Okay, here's just some more Williams stuff. This is really, really cool. before the building of the present courthouse. We got the old courthouse here, which I just love. Great building. We got City Hall and the old market house there, old farmers market. So this is really neat. Just kind of gives you a picture of what it looked like before the public square was demolished. And folks like me, I've only been in Nashville for 2 years, so this stuff is just fascinating to me because it looks so different. And here you see the old streetcar storage building there. So just really neat stuff. And here we go, as the public square evolves here. This is just a few months after that last photo was taken. So you see, courthouse has been demolished. We've still got the old market house here, the old city hall, and the complete public square is there as well. And then just a couple months later, this is a couple years later, got the new courthouse, totally different square. So it's kind of neat, just seeing the evolution there. Here's a really early one of Capitol Hill, which I love too. This is just great because you can really see this here, this portion east of the Capitol, I should say, Park Place. A lot of rich Nashvillians, very desirable place to live. Just a beautiful photo. And you'll see here too, this big crowd at the foot of the Capitol here. I'm not sure why they're there. Yes, ma'am.
About what year?
This year, this would probably be about, I think this is early 20s. As you can see here, a warm water auditorium is being built. I'm thinking it's about 21, 22, I want to say. But this is a really nice one that he recently brought into us. So when he comes in, I get very excited because I don't know what he's going to give to us on that particular day. And he gave me this, and I was just really happy to see it. Just a great photo. Another one at Capitol Hill. This one later, 38. As you'll see, a lot of these are dated, which is great for us as archivists. We love that, right? We know exactly when it was taken. We have the document. You see the old Carnegie Library there. So this is just really neat to have, too. This is one of my favorites. And you can see all the homes on Capitol Hill, you know, being not a native Nashvillian, that has changed so much. The whole Capitol Hill area is really bare now, as opposed to this whole neighborhood that was there. So that's really neat to see. Okay, this is the Cumberland looking up north, yeah, near downtown. So we see the Shelby Street Bridge with cars on it, which is something someone that is not from Nashville wouldn't know, now being a pedestrian bridge. So that's really neat. And that's in 1934, so that's an earlier one we have of his. Here's a great one that he just brought in recently that I really love. A really early shot of the Parthenon, probably the earliest one we have as far as a photograph. And you can also see off in the distance there the old History Building, which was one of the last buildings other than the Parthenon left from the Centennial celebration. So pretty neat there. 25. Another one he recently brought to us. Really interesting here because not many folks know, I didn't know this, that the Worthen company that built bags, they're in that big building on 8th Avenue. Before that, just before that, they were in the old Marathon car plant building for 10 years. They were there from 1918 to 28, I believe. So this is somewhere in that time period. I wasn't sure. And I looked for an article about a fire there, and I couldn't find it, so that's the date I thought it was. But that's a really neat photograph because you can see clearly the Worthen Bag Company on there. And here's this is a higher up shot, higher altitude. This one's 1936. Really neat because you can see really the outline of the whole city at the time. You get the Cumberland. I believe this is West End. You can clearly see going out here. This looks like probably Charlotte up there. So really great high elevation shot. So that's pretty much, I think, the Walter Williams collection. So just you can see why we really value that collection. Some early views of Nashville that we just don't see very much. We're going to switch gears a lot now. We're going to go into things that we have a lot of here, which is things from the 50s to the 70s, Metro photographer stuff, MDHA. So a lot of views. We get out in the neighborhoods a little more here, which is neat to see. And some of these color shots are just fantastic. Like these ones downtown. This one's probably early 70s at the Noel Hotel. The great signs there. We're looking down 4th, I believe. Yeah, 4th and Church there. So that's pretty neat. It's a pretty common one. I've seen that one a few times. I think this one's interesting just because it looks like the old Sulphur Dell was recently demolished here. You can see the lot here. And then same thing with the old gas cylinder there. But it's a really neat shot. You can see some of Germantown up here. but a very different area today. And this is the area that they're planning on really transforming in the next few years here to put the new baseball stadium in. I don't know if you all have heard about that, but it's going to be a very sought-after area to live in, people think. So that's kind of interesting to see there. This is neat. Aerial view of the reservoir looking north to downtown again. Probably mid-70s, maybe late even, because you got the National Life building, Tennessee Towers built. It's kind of how we... And you'll notice I date a lot of these things based on what's there and what's not there. That's the easiest way to do it generally. Sometimes you can tell from the cars also. That's a good way to do it. Okay, we're looking north of the Capitol here. Something that I didn't know until, about 6 months ago. There was a big Holiday Inn at the base of the Capitol. It's kind of interesting. You can see the Municipal Auditorium being built there too, kind of peeking its way out from Cordell Hull building there. So this is probably about 1960. That was completed in 62, Municipal Auditorium. So that's kind of neat. And then we get into like some of the neighborhoods. We had, Metro went out and they wanted to show, where we need to make improvements in the city. They wanted to show condemned properties, say, hey, this is what it looks like now. This is what it's going to look like later. And they would come back later when they redid a building or redid a neighborhood or built a housing project, and they would say, look at the contrast. Look how great we are. So this is in actually the Salem Town neighborhood now, which is really changing by the day. If you get a chance to go up there, it's every day this neighborhood is gentrifying like crazy. And this is just an example of what the houses kind of looked like in that area. And this is probably mid-60s, I would say. So this is kind of a classic photo of Capitol Hill here. No indoor plumbing. We had privies on the hill. Not the most sanitary place in the world, not the best neighborhood.
Weren't they designated for blacks and for whites?
I'm not sure.
I've read that.
Okay, there's as far as Capitol Hill, there's not too much research out there. I'd like to delve into that a little more, but that was a predominantly black neighborhood, I'm fairly certain, around there. But that's just interesting to see. A lot of people are shocked when they see that. This was happening into the early 60s, I believe, in certain neighborhoods in the city with outdoor bathrooms. Okay, this is just another shot, and I couldn't quite place this. I don't know if any of you recognize this building. Is this one of those buildings on West End? I think it might be. But I just like the house. Some of these photos just strike me, and you just kind of are attracted to them. And I just really liked how it was sitting there all by itself. And a lot of these homes were like this into the 60s, 70s, and they were just torn down and neglected. But that's it. I just thought it was a beautiful photo. And this area I kind of know too. This would kind of be in the Hope Gardens neighborhood. It's kind of northwest of the Capitol building. Again, a neighborhood undergoing a lot of change now. Just kind of shows you the conditions these people were living in. You can see, if you look closely, probably not much in the way of plumbing or sanitation in these homes, so just kind of interesting. Here's one on Jackson Street. Actually, this home on the left is still there. I looked it up the other day. That is not there anymore. It was a tear down. So a lot of times before they would tear something down, Metro would take a photo just to show what was there. This is an interesting block right here. This is actually in the Germantown neighborhood. I don't know if any of you all have been in the Germantown neighborhood recently. It is getting very nice and very expensive. And this block in particular, I believe there's $1 million home on this lot now. So this kind of gives you an idea of the change. And those were probably torn down in the 60s as well. And you might recognize this building. It's the one you're sitting in right now. Those are the doors you walked in today. Brand spanking new, 1969, Green Hills Library. Just thought that was really neat. Once in a while I find some of this building and I get really happy. Okay, this is looking, where's this one looking? Towards south of Broadway, kind of up to the old city hospital up on Rolling Mill Hill up there. And this area, again, totally changed. There's skyscrapers in this area now, several more planned, so it's just amazing to see the difference. The pinnacle skyscraper is kind of right in the middle of this shot now. It'd be like right in this area here, I believe maybe there. Which is kind of interesting. You see Ryman Auditorium clearly there. A couple of the airport here. This is when, around the time the airport opened out there, I want to say the new terminal, which I think was 61. I want to say, but this looks a little later because of cars. But it's just amazing. You could pull right up, and that was it. Just one terminal, Pretty amazing. And this one I just find fascinating. What do you notice about everyone in this photo? They're all wearing suits, right? Traveling was a luxury. It wasn't something everybody did. Pretty neat. Just construction of Municipal Auditorium. Started in '59, I believe, finished in '62. Really big project for the city. First air-conditioned building, I believe, in the South. I think I read that somewhere. This is a really neat one. All the neon in the arcade, late 50s. I love these at the arcade. We just don't have many. I don't know why, but that's a really nice one. You can see a lot of the signs. I always wonder when I see these, what happened to all those neon signs? This is an interesting one. The Imperial House off West End, out by the hospital. Now not in the best shape if you've seen it lately. Talk of tearing this one down recently. I love this building. I think it's really cool. I like mid-century stuff. I heard an interesting story the other day about someone who lived there. Growing up, he would visit there, and he said they had to remove this thing because they couldn't bring delivery trucks in to deliver things. So kind of interesting. And some of you might recognize this next one if you've been there to eat. Anyone recognize this? This is Monell's in Germantown on 6th Avenue. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Went back when it was a private residence probably. The home next door is in really nice shape now. They're both in very nice shape. They've done a nice job with this block. Okay, moving on to another collection. This is a really beautiful photographic collection. We've had it for a long time. Some of the earliest photos we have. Thus was a very recognizable photo studio in town for many years. And we got some of their photos. Starting out, usually I would just label these what I found on the photo because that's all I knew. I haven't done research on all these photos, just a few of them. So this is a house on West End, just said Brown House West End, just thought it was beautiful. We've lost. I don't believe this one's still there, no. Most of these I would say are not there, 95% of them. We lost a lot of these big grand Victorian Queen Anne era homes. There's one that partially still exists. The City Hospital up on, this is when it was brand spanking new, probably 1890s. A portion of this building is still there, and it's apartments. I've been in it. I've been inside of it, and they did a very nice job, actually.
Where's that?
It's up on Rolling Mill Hill, off Hermitage Avenue, just south of downtown. Yeah, that's a nice one. This one's pretty cool. Just a gorgeous old home. One of the many losses along Church Street. We had a lot of homes like this on Church Street. 710 would have put it, gosh, I'm trying to think of where that would be today. I'm not exactly sure, but I found the address. I always liked this one too, F.G. Lowe. I looked him up, and he actually made his money in fruit and vegetable distribution, so kind of interesting. I guess that was big business because he has a beautiful house. And this now is a very industrial area. I think it kind of, actually the freeway runs right through there for the most part. That's what that is. The Butteroff homes was 8th and Russell, so this would be the Edgefield neighborhood. A lot of these were destroyed in either the fire or the '98 tornado. I think this was one of the earlier ones, the fire, I believe 1916. On this block, there's only one home left, I believe, from the fire, and this one didn't make it, but a beautiful home. This is one of my favorites. This is the J. Ackland home. He was the son of Adelisha Ackland, I want to say, one of the sons. And his home, if you travel along West End today, you'll see there's an Outback Steakhouse, there's a Mangiano's Little Italy. You'll see this little stone wall, and there's a couple gates still left, and that was the entrance to this little subdivision. It was called West End Park. And he was the only house there for a number of years. This house was the only one there, and it's just a beautiful, this thing was just solid as a rock. I've seen one color photo of this that I know that exists, and it's really neat to see. But you can see the carriage house back there too, quite large. Just a massive home.
I read somewhere that it was supposed to have been Nashville's first gated community.
Yeah, it was. I've read that as well, yeah.
I
believe you're right.
When West End was just a dirt road.
Mm-hmm. I believe you're correct, yeah. And this is another interesting one. Does everyone recognize that railing there? Do we know where that is? It's in the arcade, right? Yeah. That's a neat one. So we got the MetLife, all the gentlemen who were working there at the MetLife office. And this is another interesting one. I don't know if you can see it. It's this Nashville Coffee and Manufacturing Company there. This building still exists too. This is on 2nd Avenue downtown. This is actually where Maxwell House Coffee started. It started right from this building. This is, I don't know if this was their first office or second, but it was one of the Cheeks, I believe, and they started making this coffee and they started serving it in the Maxwell House Hotel, and that's how it got its name, Maxwell House Coffee, and then that's how they were able to build Cheekwood, which is just from coffee, which is kind of interesting. But that's where they started. And this is a really nice one here. Not many photos exist with Kirkland Hall at Vanderbilt with both towers. This was before it had a giant fire there, so you can see both towers. The building looks quite a bit different now, but it's still there mostly. Okay, moving on again. We're going to get into MDHA stuff. We're going to start getting in the neighborhoods a little more, I think, here. Mostly color, I believe, all 35 millimeter slides. Great collection. We have thousands of these. I just thought this was interesting because you see the changing. This is 8th Avenue. You see kind of how it's changing from residential here. They got the home, then you have this, which looks like a service station, which is no longer there. And then this one, I don't know if anyone recognizes that. It's the Fall School on 8th and, what is that? Forget that cross street there. Chestnut, yep. So that's still there in very nice shape. So that's just kind of interesting. There was a service station there, and you see a home there. A lot of homes on 8th Avenue before it got a little more commercial. So this is very different now. 9th and Division would be kind of right in the Gulch area, which is becoming a very expensive place to live, and a lot of young people like living there. And this just kind of shows it was just workers. It was very blue-collar worker housing. These ones I always find fascinating too. Everything with old corner stores. Just love neighborhood stores. It's romantic in a way, isn't it? You could walk to the store. But this was actually near where I-40 is, the south loop of I-40, so South Nashville neighborhood. Big Jack's place. This one is, I believe, in the Edgehill neighborhood. We had a lot of this here. This just gives you an idea of what some of the housing was like in some of those neighborhoods. You know, some of the more lower income neighborhoods, this is what the housing stock looked like. So a lot of people, you know, they're sad that we lost some of this, which I understand, but some of it, you know, was a little substandard for living. This one's kind of interesting. We see the polar bears. Do we recognize those? Those are now on the corner of, what, 12th and Edgehill, I believe. There's 2 of them there. There's actually 2 others in the Germantown neighborhood. If you go down 6th Avenue, there's one in someone's front lawn. Then he has the other one hiding in his backyard, which is facing the dirt. It's half apart, but it's 4 of them actually exist. It's kind of neat. This is actually on Edgehill. This was on Edgehill Avenue, I believe, in the 60s. Here's a block that's changed considerably. This is Dedrick Street and 3rd Avenue. So this entire block was demolished in the late 60s. Just kind of gives you an idea of what the scale was like downtown. A lot more human scale, 2- and 3-story buildings, as opposed to some of the things that are on this street now. We see a lot taller buildings. We see them set off the street. You see here they're on the street. It's more like a Broadway scale type thing. Another example of that. This is the south side of the public square, so directly south of where the courthouse is now. This block also was demolished. You see a crystal there in the corner, which is kind of cool. Here's another view of that Dedrick Street block, looking the opposite direction. We're looking east now, up towards the courthouse. Again, that entire block demolished. Here's the east side of the square, some of the buildings surrounding the courthouse. I love these. These are just beautiful buildings. I really find it sad they let these go. Probably mid-70s, early 70s, I want to say. I don't know. This is Lower Broadway. And for those of you who've been in Nashville for a while, you know what Lower Broadway used to be like. I always find these very fascinating, especially when I have people visit from out of town. You know, you tell them what Lower Broadway was like even 10 years ago. They can't believe it. And I just find it fascinating, that area. This is, I believe, 2nd Avenue. So this really, really paints a picture of what 2nd Avenue was like, even into the 70s here. You can see these are all just wholesale stores. So you see the big trucks pulling up. I mean, it was very much a wholesale district. And this one is Capitol Hill, probably about, well, it'd be probably about 1950, because we've got the Severe Office Building built on Capitol Hill, and we've got the Tennessee State Supreme Court building, but no TSLA here, so about 1950, I would say. So the neighborhood's still intact down here. Not the best neighborhood. Didn't really want to venture down in there. And this one I find very fascinating here too, because we do not have many shots of this building here. This is the Bijou Theater. At one time, it was the largest theater in the city. It sat the most folks. It was really an African-American theater run by an African-American man. But just a beautiful old theater. I think it was like 2,000 plus seats. It was on 4th Avenue. Yeah. It's kind of very close to the Capitol, and it was torn down to build a municipal auditorium. It was right in that area, so that's a nice one to have. This is, you might recognize this, looks pretty similar today. This is Hillsboro Village in probably about 1970-ish, or mid-60s. So no more McClure's, but you can see one thing that does remain. If you drive down Hillsboro today, that's still there. The Jones Pet Shop neon sign, which is really neat that they kept that. And that's it's probably the only sign that's still there in that photo. Here's a similar view, just looking kind of down on the street, and you can see Pancake Pantry here, which is now expanded all the way to the end of this block. And this is not a service station anymore, it's a restaurant. So that's kind of neat to see. This is another similar view, but sadly, earlier this year, this whole block was demolished. But a great view of that, just to have that. That's 21st Avenue in Hillsboro Village, looking north. So this, I went by there the day they started tearing these down and took a bunch of photos myself. Being an archivist, I wanted to make sure I had images of that whole block, so we have those. This is the next block north, which is essentially the exact same except for few facade changes on this building, but most of this is pretty much intact, and you can see the Belcourt Cinema sign here, which is kind of really neat. And I don't know if you folks know this, and I learned this when I started working here. This was actually the original entrance to the Belcourt Cinema. It was called the Hillsboro Theater. So you entered right off 21st here. This was kind of the lobby, and then you went back in there. The entrance now to this is, of course, on Belcourt Avenue around the corner. Kind of interesting. Okay, next collection here. We're going to get into the 1949 City Property Survey. So, in 1949, for whatever reason, Metro, or Nashville, or not Metro at the time, Nashville wanted to take a photo of every piece of property that they owned. Fire halls, schools, the airport, things like that. So they sent somebody out and they took a photo of everything, and we love them for that. I wish they would have done it every 5 years before this too. This is the only one we have. So this is a lot of schools, and I'm going to show first the ones that are still in existence. This is a Parole School, 49, still there. These are great because you can see all the old cars too. These are pretty cool. This is Bailey School, still in very good shape, still where it is, East Nashville. The Buena Vista School, still there, I believe. I don't know if it's an elementary school. They changed so much now. This school still very much there, near Vanderbilt there, kind of off 25th, I want to say. Cavert School. This is Cone, which is out off Charlotte, still there. East Nashville High School, very much still there, in good shape. Some of these are really interesting with that. You'll see in a little bit. Here's West End High, 1949. Now a middle school, I believe. Elliott School, a very interesting one in Germantown. 6th and Jefferson. Not a school anymore, but still very much there. One of the few old things right off Jefferson there. Here's Hume Fog, 1949, and I love the cars in this photo. If you look really closely, these are both yellow cabs. They say yellow cab on the side. They're very cool. All the people on the street. Now we're going to get to some of the ones that are gone from this 49 survey. So they got in there right before a few of these were torn down, probably 15 to 20 years after this. or some sooner. So this is Washington. This was in North Nashville. I thought this was beautiful with the columns, the Doric columns up there. I-40 took this right out. A lot of highways came through and took a lot of these schools out. This is Carter Lawrence, which was not undone by a highway, but a newer school in a similar location. Very Art Deco, pretty cool art, modern look. This is very interesting, I thought. This is what this photo was labeled. The East Nashville High School Custodian's House. I thought it was pretty opulent for a custodian's house. But I think it's very neat. Now, I don't know if he lived there or if it was like the place where they stored their custodial equipment. It's what it was labeled, so just thought it was very interesting. It was kind of right next to the school, kind of southwest of the school. And then this, I don't know if you all remember this. See, I think this was torn down in the late 80s. This was the stadium behind East Nashville High School. This sat 6,500 people, so it was a pretty big stadium. And then some of the smaller neighborhood schools, I love these just because of that idea of walking to school. You know, and the kids in the neighborhood, they had their little school to go to, and this was one of them. On Douglas in East Nashville, the Eastland School. Not sure when this was torn down. Another one, it's Northeast Nashville, the Glen School on Cleveland Street. A lot of these buildings, similar architecture, right around turn of the century, 1905-ish, some of these. J.M. Head School, 16th Avenue. So this would have been over where the Henry Hale homes are, off Charlotte. Not there anymore. I had to do some research to find out where West Side Avenue was. Anyone know where that is? It's kind of right by Vanderbilt. The entire street doesn't exist anymore because Vanderbilt's athletic fields cut right through it. So that one's no longer there. This is a really neat one, I thought. The old Lipscomb School on Green Street, kind of right off Hermitage Avenue up there. I-40 went right through where this was. Looked it up on a map. But a beautiful school. Love the tower there. Here's the Wharton School, which was 18th Avenue North. So this would have been, yeah, North Nashville somewhere. No longer there. This one's kind of interesting. The old Bellevue School, and it's not Bellevue as in south of town and west of town. It was called Bellevue V-I-E-W. And this one was very close to Germantown. And this was actually built in, I think, about 1868, a very old school. So at the time of this survey, this is one of the oldest buildings in the survey. So very cool. That was still standing. It wasn't a school in session still, but it was still standing. Another very interesting one, the old Howard School, which was built, gosh, 1890s, I want to say, 1880s. And this was kind of between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. And this is what the remainder of the school looked like at the time in 1949. So not much left of it. That's what it looked like before that. Just to give you an idea. So it was very nice back in the day. And Nelson Mary, this is another street that I had to look up, Springhead Street. I don't remember where it was, gosh. Beautiful castle-like school at Trimble School on 2nd and Chestnut. Very neat building. This one is in my neighborhood, so I know this area very well. The old Ackland School on Lillian Street. So this is now a home on this corner. But actually, if anyone knows Warner School, which is on Russell Street in East Nashville, this was the annex for, they call it the Russell Street School Annex, or Warner School Annex. So I think they used it for gym activities, things like that, during this time period. But then they demolished this probably about 2 or 3 years after this photo was taken. Okay, I think this is our final section, I think, and a little early. So this is artwork of Nashville. This is some of the earliest views we have of things in the city. This is actually a book, but ours is falling apart, so it's not really a book anymore. It's mostly just photos. And these are 2 different editions of this, 1894 and 1901. But some of this stuff really shows the great early architecture of Nashville. And that's what the cover looks like. I believe it's a W.H. Parrish Publishing Company, it says there. So again, really early, great views. This would have been 1894, I believe. So I think Belmont was started in like 1890. So very early view of Belmont. That'd be the south side of the building. Here's a ladies' school at the time that not many know about, Boscobel College. And this was 1894, I believe, as well. And this was in East Nashville. It was up on a hill. I don't know if any of you all know where the Martha O'Brien Center is today. It's kind of right on top of where that was, or that is. Just really beautiful. It started off as this home, I believe. Then they expanded there. They always had, between 15 and 20 women attending. It was a college. We've got a couple yearbooks of theirs, and it's just a very interesting place. And here, I believe you mentioned West End Park, gated community. First one, there it is. And a lot of this is still there, surprisingly. This is not. But you can see way in the background there, Ackland's home. Joseph Ackland, I believe. Just a really neat image there. And you also notice in a lot of these, what do you notice with the roads? No such thing as a paved road then, was there? First paved road was Woodward Avenue in Detroit, Michigan in 1906, I believe. Here's the Hospital for the Insane. I love this. It's kind of eerie how it's got kind of this glow. Hospital for the Insane. And this was on Murfreesboro Road, south of town, I believe. I believe recently demolished in the last 10, 12 years, something like that. And here's a set of homes that I just love. It's a couple of my favorites. And these were out on Murfreesboro Road, too. And you'll notice that name, probably Colmere or the Colmere Club. There's still a building out there, and actually that's the second one. This was the first that was on that lot. And this one is much more opulent, really beautiful, huge home, and a fire actually destroyed this home. I'm not sure what year. And then directly across the street from that was this gigantic grand home. I think this was built in the 1830s, I want to say. I did a little research on it. This was Kingsley. And this was also, they just demolished this. I believe the city owned it briefly because of the airport. It was near the airport, and they had to demolish it. But a beautiful home. And this one, just kind of a little perspective in Nashville here. This might be my favorite photo that is in our entire collection because this is Hillsboro Road. And you know that earlier photo I showed you of like the Belcourt Cinema right there? This is that exact area. So it just gives you an idea of what it was like. It was pretty remote, pretty rural at the time. Not that far out of town, but pretty rural. Here is the original Hume Fog. Same location, 8th and Broadway. And this was the building that was there before. And I believe there's two. I don't know which one was which. It says the Hume and Fog. I'm not sure which one was which, but just a really neat photo of that corner. 1894. Here's a great short or up close view of Park Place. So the Capitol building is right here, just for some perspective. You see just the huge, opulent, beautiful homes here, right on the hill. I love this one. No longer. And here's a great one because what do we see here? Streetcar. Very cool. Running right down West End Avenue. You can see a church out in the distance. That's no longer there, but West End was really filled with huge homes. People of means lived on West End. Not many left. Maybe a couple left if you drive down West End. That's a really nice one. Here is Ward Seminary. So we're looking at 8th Avenue here, north. Rosa Parks Boulevard now. This home is still there. Do we know what this one is? It's the Standard at the Smith House, the restaurant. Yeah, it's still there. And this was where Ward Belmont, it would later be Ward Belmont and then Belmont. This is kind of where it started right there. So kind of a neat one. You'll see actually streetcar tracks in there too if you look very closely. This was quite the building. Tennessee School for the Blind, also up on the hill by the city hospital. Just a grand, huge building. Very cool. Demolished, I'm not sure when. 60s probably. This is one of our last ones, if not our last one. There's so many homes in this Harvick of Nashville. This is just the one that struck me because this one, I believe, most of it was standing until about 1975. I don't know if anybody remembers that. But this was actually a part of St. Thomas for a number of years, the hospital over near church. So, and I heard someone tell a story about walking in here. It was one of the entrances for the original St. Thomas, and they said it had this grand staircase. I just love that home. It's a very cool story. J.M. Dickinson was the gentleman's name. I forget what he did. And then we can't end on something that's been demolished. We got to end on something that's still standing, right? So what is this? We recognize this? Merchants, right? Interesting one. This is probably the late 70s, so probably not a place you want to hang out in the 70s. I don't know. Just very interesting to me that's looks completely different, and now it's a very upscale place, and just a success story to end. How about that? And that's probably all I have for you today. And I wanted to thank you guys for coming. I was told to do this yesterday, so this is what I put together. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Yes. Any old photographs that we might want to add to the collection, what format would you?
What format? Oh gosh, we're willing to look at anything. If you bring it in or if you know somebody, we love looking at photographs. I love when things walk in the door, and that's the great thing about being here every day. I never know what's going to walk in. We have a donor agreement form that we have folks fill out, and that's about it. Any more questions?
What about getting pictures?
Getting photos? You can come to me. We generally charge $5 an image for a copy of an image. We'll put it on a CD for you, or we can't really print copies. We don't have that capability here. When we move downtown, we might. We're going to get some new technology, and we'll be able to print, hopefully, nice size things. But here, we'll just probably put a copy on a CD. Or if you bring us a flash drive, we can put it on there. Yeah. Any more questions?
Do you
Yes.
have any kind of, is there any way to have any kind of community outreach to save old photographs from being thrown in the trash when people die?
You could tell them to bring them to us.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've seen that happen so many times,
Yeah.
or you go to thrift stores and you'll find a box of old photos.
Oh yeah. Being an archivist, when I see something like that, I always flip through it. If there's something I recognize, I'll buy it. Even I'll bring it here. I'll throw it in our pile. You just naturally want to save things. I think you're naturally nostalgic if you like history and you like stories and you want to save things. That's just the way I've always been.
Like that book you showed.
Our Work of Nashville, not in the best shape. Yeah.
But, I mean, that wasn't the only one. Somebody must.
There are a few out there. They're expensive. Once in a while, they'll pop up on the internet, $150-ish. The Nashville, the library downtown has a good copy, I guess. And we're kind of merging with them in the spring. We're kind of going to be working with them a little more, so we'll have access to that, which is nice. And they have some things we don't have, and we have a lot of things they don't have, so it's kind of a nice partnership.
That book had, you said it was mostly pictures.
It was all images
But
very early.
it had reading material describing them.
It didn't really. All it really had was that little description at the bottom. But we had a gentleman about 6 months ago come in, and his mother had a copy of the book, and she went through the entire book and she wrote out descriptions for every building. So we have a copy of that, which is great to have. Yeah. We're lucky we have that. Yes, ma'am.
Will you have access when you go to the library, to the depository of the banner, the ones
The
that
banner?
are on the hard? There are some awesome pictures, but
Oh,
they're
yeah.
hard copied. Are you going to be digitizing them, or are you going to are you going to have access? Because they have really strict
Do they?
limitations. Yeah.
Well, we will be working with them, kind of in conjunction with them, so we'll have a little bit of access to them. We know that the woman who runs the entire banner collection over there, and they were given the entire banner collection, for those of you who don't know, the Nashville room, which is great. All the photographs and everything. We don't have any of that. They have it downtown. Yeah. And there's just, who knows what's in there, I mean, people have been digitizing that stuff for 15 years. They've been going through and scanning things, and there's still so much more to see. That's what's great about this.
But are you going to digitize them, or are you going to put them on
I think they have volunteers every day that are working hours on that. So it's just a matter of time. And I tell people all the time, if we had an army here, we still take us years to get everything digitized on the computer. We're working to do that, though. It just takes a lot of time. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah.